Welcome to Journeys Into Enlightenment with Janet. Join Janet and her friends as they gather at the intersection of consciousness and self-experience, what being consciousness in human form is all about. Access heart-centered awareness with them and feel the difference in the moment that will last a lifetime.
Hello, I'm Janet Barrett, and welcome. Thank you for joining me here on Episode 5 of Journeys Into Enlightenment with Janet. Our focus is always about meeting at the intersection of consciousness and self in play, in the myriad of ways we have of noticing life and being, and what that diversity might encompass. Each episode is its own, as a container of space, time, place, and contents. Each stands alone and are part of the whole series of episodes at the same time. Whenever you are listening in, you are immediately part of it, anytime, every time. Each episode is held from within our awareness. We are at our essence, consciousness, and in different aspects. We go here first, as when we listen from our position as self, we are limited to the ground rules of the physical realms. We take this moment, like right now, to start to shift into our non-physical realms of being. Can you feel it? Pay attention to what you just engaged inside you. How are you being in this, our 5th episode, with registering the state of potential as real? Here our senses engage differently. Our attachments to the known relax, and the rules are different. Quantum realms of awareness pitch us all what we think ass over tea kettle. That's a scientific term. We find ourselves embracing from within our different references and being physical. Time and space become free of our hard set rules of reality, and we are in the now. Past, present, future become present. Enjoy the sensation of your breath, your heartbeat, your relaxing, your emotions settling as you step into this core of consciousness, where all known and all unknown exist in harmony in this state of warmth, support, non-judgment, and grace. Let yourself feel the rhythms and all the places it goes as you enjoy our journey. Today's topic is consciousness and appreciating the unknown. In episode 4, in my discussion with my friend Harvey Kraft, he was sharing about the 3 foundations in being: compassion, love, selflessness. And I realized there was a 4th for me, the quality of unknowing. I felt a tremendous sense of unity at the time. It was the blend of Eastern traditions of spirituality and consciousness technology. Each of us, at our essence level of awareness, are accessing the field of what is possible and what has not yet formed and is as yet unknown. This is potential. Only when we recognize and engage potential as the dynamic it is, as the building block of consciousness, can we experience wanted change in being. Our everyday lives are filled with opportunities of the unknown coming into form. How much we utilize it indicates our level of awareness and our creative energies. As you listen in today, you may notice that at times it may seem that Bud and I seem to be talking over each other in our conversation. I must laugh and issue a blank apology to all listening in. You may know this for yourself. The information comes flying in fast and furious as we tap into the state, and it takes time to speak to convey clarity, and we are both adept at tracking the information that is wanting to be shared in tandem and in cross flows. Time is fluid, and all is at once. Tom's meditation, What Do Ya Know?, will add flavor and other references to our container of this episode for you. We are building comfort as part of our experience together. Be sure to wander through Tom's extensive archive of meditations at Interlude and Internet Retreat when you need a reminder to stop and focus as he does.
What do you know? What do you know for sure? How do you know what is real? How do you know what is true? Philosophers and mystics have explored these questions for millennia. Plato described our perception of reality as like shadows we see on a cave wall. We mistake the shadows for reality. Chuang Tzu described awakening from a dream that he was a butterfly, dreaming it was a man, and not being able to know for sure who was dreaming whom. Descartes thought that the only thing he could know for sure was that he existed because he thought he did. He summed it up with the catchy phrase, "I think, therefore I am." George Berkeley tried to explain existence with the not quite as catchy phrase, "To be is to be perceived." He held that matter cannot be conceived to exist as independent of the mind. In the 20th and 21st centuries, physicists have taken a shot at defining the limits of our ability to know the material world, and the name Heisenberg uncertainty principle gives us a pretty good idea of where they're going with this. From whichever direction we approach these questions, we must conclude that things are not quite what they seem. As Albert Einstein said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. For many of us, this is confusing and unsettling because our senses tell us what the world is like, and our senses are relatively consistent. For some of us, this level of uncertainty is anxiety-provoking. Some reject the uncertainty by embracing the concrete views of a higher authority. They become true believers, giving up reason to a teacher or doctrinal system that tells a truth that can be believed without screwing up the brain with complex thought. We would propose, on the other hand, that hidden within the uncertainty is the thrill of a spiritual life. Nobody cares to do a puzzle that's too easy. Nobody learns to fly because they enjoy ground school or skydives because they like walking around with a parachute on. When we decide to live a good and full life, when we care about truth and beauty, the mysteries of life deepen and enrich us. Faced with the uncertainty of an essentially unknowable reality, we have several choices. One is to ignore the issue and deal with the apparent reality of our senses or of someone else's definition of reality. Another is to become unhinged from the collective reality that we all share and exist in a psychotic world of our own making. Or we can look deeply within our own heart and mind, gradually stripping away what is not essential to find the true essence. When we look deeply into the darkness of our own unknowing, we open ourselves to that change of state that has been described as satori, enlightenment, or unity with God. Through our realization of the illusion of separateness, we find the unity of all existence. In the unity of all that is, we find love. Once touched by the reality of unbounded love, nothing is the same. Here is a suggestion. Use your mind. Read. Talk to people. Listen to wise people. Learn what there is to be learned about the way the world works, the way the mind works, and the nature of the human spirit. If your spiritual path asks you to ignore reason, think again. Truth is not bounded by rational thought, but it's not devoid of reason either. Learn to release yourself from the grip of your thinking mind and go within yourself to seek the truth that is beyond ideas. Meditate in a simple form that can transport you beyond words and feelings to a deeper knowing. Practice. Practice. Open your heart. Judge the truth of your path by the quality of love in your heart. As you seek truth, you will know you are facing in the right direction when your capacity for compassion is expanding. When your experience of loving kindness becomes ever more inclusive.
So often, different disciplines and modalities will use the same word, but meanings are used differently. And sometimes English does not have enough words to express a thing, be it feeling or thought, so we can use the same word. Right in this moment, someone better educated in English than me will perhaps use different words. Our conversation has a lot to offer in terms of being, and here are just a few thoughts that might be helpful to consider for this episode. Here is context for the use of the words know, knowing, knowledge, and unknown. We can know something. In this reference, we are at the level of self. It is our assumptions, emotions, thoughts out of reasoning and rationalization. It is all about mind and thinking. It includes false truths, beliefs, what we think we know about life, and from within our biases. We can have knowledge of something. This still is self, gathering information about stuff, be it modalities, our neighbors, that thing poking at us. It is our left brain in function, validating and verifying and building logic around. We can call it learning or training, fields of observances, memories of observances, and experience, and someone else's observance and declaration, their observation. Knowledge is not always truth, but projection coming from a viewpoint, powerfully enough to create a reality of that viewpoint. It gets treated as a field of knowledge and becomes such. It may be truth, or maybe just one person's viewpoint about something that others now buy into. We can know something. This is knowing that is coming from our intuitive senses. Sounds like the first one I mentioned. But this time, metaphysical terms call this claircognizance. Knowing a thing without verified testing and proving perhaps to the left brain. Comes from the right brain, which taps into the field of the heart, field of unified consciousness, an awareness on some level, but not always recognized as human references, information that is in the field that can be tapped into. Unknown. Unknown holds our curiosity and creativity. It is the potential of consciousness, that building medium of the not yet formed into known as self. It is a state of awareness as part of consciousness. It is all things and no thing. And it is the duality to known. Always right there when you let it be. So, who will be helping you and me in exploring this unknown quality to being? My friend, Bud Jahn. What I know is that Bud is a marvelous traveler in our physical and non-physical realms of awareness. I know that he is joining us. I know that we have a starting place, our topic. None of us know where we will go in our conversations together. And for Bud and I, that is the fun and power of being open to the unknown. I met Bud years ago at a couple of matrix energetic seminars for a few moments, and then unexpectedly when I was at another friend's house. Funny how the details slip away when they are not important. They were just moments and days filled with lots of moments when one is in a seminar state of mind. But I remembered Bud. It was also a strong enough connection that unknowingly to me, he enjoyed my other podcast series, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, for several years. He was one of our many silent listeners who was in no way energetically silent. I did not know that until after we had just finished that series and I called him about this podcast. Let me just say that we are all better off for him having been present with us on the cosmic wavelength. He and I chatted a few times over the years. When I was putting this podcast together, another friend who remembered him from a conference call we shared said, "You should ask him to be part of this new project. He feels right." and I am so glad he is. I had to ask him to send me his bio more than once, which is him at his minimal best with me digging for the details. In his world, the details are just stuff, and only being present is what is important, which so much reflects my being, and why Bud is so good in how he is with others. I have always found the term body worker to be interesting. That would sound like work. What Bud is a body whisperer. He is a certified Alexander Technique teacher with the Contemporary Alexander School of the Alexander Alliance USA. He has additional trainings in Cranial Sacral, polarity, and various energy works, such as living in the Illuminated Heart with Drunvulo Melchizedek and Matrix Energetics, where we connected. All are expanding on his intuitive abilities and appreciations of systems engineering, whether they be rock or body, for he is a retired engineer in the oil industry. He has a deep, deep love of Rumi and the poets who celebrate God laughing, and is an active student of conscious awareness. And Bud is also unique in other ways. I bet many of us cannot say we were raised by 3 families. He is both son and father and lives in the wilds of Alaska. One way he expresses his being is as a hospice volunteer and respite caregiver. He is all about the intersection of the known and not known, and the dynamics of the unknown. So here we are, Bud, you and I and the world out there, and we're in the unknown, we're in the known, and thanks so much for joining me. How you doing today?
Great. What a beautiful day.
It really is. So everyone, let's just reiterate and bring back in our growing awareness of being present in the moment. And as Bud and I so enjoy this state, and we started with sharing with the universe clicking in, ringing in on itself, that this starts as soon as you start listening to the show, that this place, ourselves as consciousness, soul, essence, whatever our words are is starting to be present. It is present. It is always present. It just depends upon how you hold your awareness at any one moment. So we started it off. We had Tom add his flavoring to this state. And let's just, now that Bud is with us, just take a moment and just notice the total openness and where it isn't open. And that'll be what our show today is all about, is the known and the unknown, and how we always have the unknown present. It says potential in our field of awareness as consciousness. And the known, which is your sense of self and how you relate to everything. So just notice and allow yourself to, either as a breath or as a deepening state awareness, that we are present to whatever degree of awareness you hold that to be. And just trust, and exploring what trust is, maybe, that this is real. And there feels kind of like a collective breath being held. So I'm just going to notice that. There we go. What would it be like to let go? What are the things we trust? And that may be a huge chunk about our discussion about the unknown and what we trust. So what you noticing, Bud?
There's so much physicality going along with this immersion of coming more into, and I want to say this moment, but this moment is anytime anybody listens to this, or anytime we speak in this field, it has no boundaries of time and space. That's the coolest part about it. That's what I noticed.
Yeah, that's a good thing to notice. So our topic is about the unknown.
And I think we really know the unknown by what is known. Does that make sense? Is that the way we, in your experience, we know what we know. We just don't realize the limits of what we know. And we set up what we don't know to be maybe something to be wary. What is the word? Wary of. Wary. Yeah, W-A-R-Y. What's your awareness of this?
We have to ask our way out of what we know to get into the unknown. Although the unknown is knocking on our door all the time, knocking on the window, we have to seek it before it seeks us. It does a little.
And why? And explain why that is something you want to do. Because we start with the known. What's wrong with the known? I know it. And I know what's going to happen. And we don't know that what we know is going to happen is a whole bunch of presumption, choices, et cetera, but we know it, and we can trust that. And really, that's such a state of fallacy, don't you think, in this regard?
It's micro managing and encapsulating the container that we are. If we take our barriers down, what we know is almost walls that keep us separate from what is unknown.
Mm-hmm. But you and I are comfortable with the unknown. And what I'm aware of in groups lately is that so many people don't like the unknown. I mean, they're just adamant. And to me, the unknown is potential when we're talking in regards to consciousness technologies. Mm-hmm. So our work is all about embracing potential. And here I found with people, there was maybe on one level acceptance, but not on another level of acceptance. And then it was very degreed how they were going to interact with any of that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was like, whoa. So, how do we handle the idea of potential, because that's a negative to a lot of people in their frameworks. You're full of potential, right? We heard that as a child, and it got used against us. So there's those kind of references. So potential is not user-friendly. It's actually something to clobber yourself with and keep yourself
so small. Here's a couple ideas that are jumping out right now.
Okay.
And one is that what we know, we tend to put into a framework of reality. And when we do that, we expect everything we think, hear, smell, taste, and get associated with to fall within the realm of what I know. Mm-hmm. That's expectation. And so if we're unable to embrace what you're referring to as a discomfort of the unknown, if we're unwilling to embrace that, then it's really hard letting go of the known. So I liken this to a Saturday morning. A Saturday morning when I was a little boy was so freaking exciting because I would get up and realize the potential of the day is greater than any kind of game I could have ever played. My parents, my dad in particular, would have something to do today, like plumb a toilet, whatever. And I was so excited to be able to work with him. And I had no idea what the tools were, what we do, how much time it would take, and who cares? It's like, it's new. Something new is happening that I don't understand yet. So to be able to embrace that is like, wow.
That's a real nice flavor you've brought into that our moment here. Right, when there was the excitement of, we're going to call it the unknown, but it probably, to a child, it's not that term. It's our innocence, of just being someplace, because that's the way I think children live, is, so that's the unknown, is innocence also. And that's the flavor. And a lot of us feel that we've lost our innocence. and we have experiences and we're compromised, et cetera, and that's just a way to view it from the hardened self, where innocence is always present. For me, it's just where it gains information. So it's like the tarot card of the fool who leaves home with just a little bit and goes off into the world and has an adventure. And he's the most powerful card in the tarot deck because he's totally into experiencing what is there without a sense of being compromised. There is no compromise. So when we're dealing with potential and the unknown, that is our innocence that hasn't yet had the experience, and where then it becomes known. And so we're always in between this dance, right? Innocence is always gaining experience, and it's something to be so appreciative of ourselves. But when you feel that you have no innocence, that you know it, and you're marked by what you know.
Absolutely. That's a container. The lack of innocence is a huge container.
Huge container. So, everyone, as you're noticing, now there's a reason why I wanted to make sure from the beginning that it was clear about being in this particular state of awareness, is that you're going to notice emotions come up. And what Bud and I are talking about is a lot of emotional information that we've been holding. And in this place, just notice that it's not quite the same. And that's the key, is that you're going to be different with what you know. And it loosens it up, and it gives you perspective on your experience and being that you will not have just as self, because that knows everything. So it's the bushwhack we do that goes on. So in just noticing where you go, where our words take you, where this state takes you, and what you go off into exploration, that it is all from that state of innocence, of potential, of unknowing, that there is no judgment, that it is supportive. Because most of us have no idea what those things mean. And I don't say that to be harsh. I just say that from a state of awareness that can register different levels of awareness. And you can do it too. So in appreciating this conversation and what gets maybe revealed, unfolded, stirred up, triggered, whatever the word is, whatever the sensation, know, as we know, and let us be here with you in this place, that it's not about sympathy, it's not about empathy, it's about compassion. Both Bud and I have had incredible life experiences, and we are able to follow other people's life experiences. And whatever feels new is new for each of us, but may be very familiar in other realms, in other contexts. So I just felt like I needed to interject that, Bud. So
I like that definition. There's two things that we use to keep ourselves separated from the unknown, since we're speaking that. One of them is the idea of innocence, which you covered much ground on. The other idea would be honesty, which is like, really? So
yeah, that's kind of different than truth, right?
Honesty,
or is it the same for you? How's that reference? Is that the same as truth, or is that slightly different?
When you speak your innermost truth, and innocently, there's a power in it that is incredible.
Yeah.
It's unjudged. So when you say innocence, when we stop removing ourselves from the larger field that we're talking about, which is, we keep saying the unknown, it goes by many, many names. we keep ourselves out of that realm by saying, "Oh, I've lost my innocence because of what I've done," or "I've lost my innocence." Yeah. Go ahead, excuse me.
Or had done to me, kind of thing.
Yes, or there's so many ways that we beat ourselves up because we think, and I'm using the word very specifically, we think we're not innocent anymore. And oh no, if we could let go of the ideas that we're not innocent and we're not honest, that we don't have access to those, then we could discover how we are actually torturing our soul. This is a little bit of Rumi that I'm rewording. We torture ourselves by pretending and finding reason for not being innocent or honest. It's like, oh man, is that big material.
And I think there's also the false honesty, the false truth, right? That's that projection of self that's maintaining a bias. It's maintaining a story. So it generates this.
It's protecting the self.
It's protecting the self. So if we acknowledge that within all of us, that we have this capability, and it's really useful in some situations, like if you're under threat or something. And then there are times and then there are times where you can see where it catches us. Okay. And what also is coming to mind in what you were saying, and thank you, Rumi, we must be channeling him, that for my group members that have had specifically children, but it was for all of us in our work, when you had to have an answer and you didn't have one. And when the child who asks why and where, and they're 2 and 3 and 4, and they're constantly at you asking why, how, and the parent who's dealing with so much, and to be present for that child and to say, okay, we do this because of this. And then there's the time you say, I don't know why I do that, and thank you for making me uncomfortable, and I don't have time for that. And there's that. And then there's the, oh, well, we do it because of, and you hear yourself saying something and you realize the fallacy in it. You realize how you bought the party line somewhere.
And I have to ask you, what do you realize you're speaking to when you have that realization?
Yourself, of course, right?
You're speaking to a child of innocence. You're speaking to a point of innocence. And when you do, you go, oh, that's bullshit.
But it's also your own point of innocence.
Yes.
In that co-creation, that's all active there. And I think we get the what would you call that? The framework shows up. I'm the adult. I'm the big. I have to have an answer. I don't have an answer, so I'm just going to hit you, and you shut up and stay over there. And
absolutely, Don't ask me. I'm too busy. Whack.
And don't ask me because you're going to challenge me, and I know that you're doing that on purpose. And you can just hear all this litany of stuff.
Let me jump in here. The children learn a language very early on that is not verbal. They learn emotional language. And they have a huge vocabulary by the time they are born. And they know, and then they learn how to push. That's why it's so wonderful to have your buttons pushed by a child. Wonderful and terrorizing.
At the same time, right? So everyone just take a breath, or don't hold it. Just notice it, okay? And because you can feel the intensity in this conversation that's shown up. And just notice that that's got so much emotional richness to it. And I'm going to just call it emotional richness because I'm not going to judge it. Because it's honest, probably, misunderstood, predictable, and not so embraced. We hold this, we'll start to put the way this feels someplace that we deal with later, or we put into resistance or denial, or any of those creative endeavors. So just in a state of no judgment, which is, it's really easy to do when you just allow yourself to realize how judgeful you are, and you go, oh, well, what would that be like to not, right? And that's really what known and unknown is about. That's what potential and energy are about. Potential is the building block of consciousness. It is how it's everything, no thing at the same time. Nothing has formed yet. And then energy coalesces. Energy is a coalition of elements and times and space, whatever, coming together. So now there's something. And then you can go back to potential, which is what this is. Introduce the unknown again back into what is known as energy. And in this state of awareness that happens, and we indulge in it all the time, those of us who do this kind of work, and stuff changes. Your knowns change. You have a new known. You had a known, and now you have a new known. And you get to experience that. That's the delight of being, is engaging what we know and what we have not yet found out. Now, so you can have a couple of approaches with that. You can take it from the viewpoint of what's missing. If I have an issue, what's missing? I'm missing something here because I'm having an experience of it that I don't really like. So I'm either missing what my intention is with it, what the value is of it, what could be different. That is missing.
You've taken a quantum leap here, Janet.
Ooh, okay. Is that good?
So
is that good?
It's good. It's good and unexplained. So.
Oh, okay.
You're assuming that. You're assuming that when somebody's having an experience that doesn't feel good, there's something missing. Well, most people will come up with a reason why they're supposed to be having that experience. But what you and I know is that there's some beauty we're missing. There's something really awesome we're missing if we're stuck in a problem. Just as an example.
Great for catching that. So we go to our validator. Our perceptual biases plug in, and they judge what this experience is. I have to find worth out of it. I have to find worth. I don't even know that there's a different approach to it. I'm just stuck in the field of this is what I know, what's possible. And we're really small. You can feel how small that is. So when you engage this as just an informational state, an awareness, an experience of a bias, from that viewpoint, you can see what's missing. And anyone who goes to people who do energy work like we do, whether they're a body worker or, mental health or whatever their distinctions, labels might be, we're listening to what is and what isn't that's in that space. And how successful we are with you experiencing something different is us bringing that which you have no awareness of, or the awareness is in a place that you can't easily access, into fruition. If it was present, what happens? Right? That's what we do. And it doesn't have to be talk therapy. And it doesn't have to be anything. It could be in the blink of an eye, just depending upon how truthful that is in each of us.
This is the place you're describing that is very clear, and that is when we are able to look at something without bias and prejudice and removal. We know there's always a story that's got two ends to it. And we know that not only does it have two ends, it has a quantum element to it, that if it was all looked at in its rightness and wrongness and everything else, it would literally take you into another field. We're looking at this stuff from a field where judgment isn't. Mm-hmm. It isn't missing. It just isn't used because everything works together already. Field of the heart. So we're kind of circling on that, and that's an ability to see it with other people is wonderful, and to see it with self is magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just notice, everyone, what you're aware of. Some of this might sound like esoteric chatter, or, we want a practical example, and okay, I can translate that. And so just in noticing, just allow yourself to notice an event or whatever the thought or feeling might be, and let it be present. And this is something that Bud and I certainly have had conversation about in the last several weeks. In my conversation with Harvey Kraft, who was the episode before, episode 4, and his mentioning how the Eastern traditional viewpoints of religion and spirituality include, as the sixth sense, consciousness and the intuitiveness that feels like. Right? And how, if consciousness is a sense, not just a state of awareness, what happens? And there was such an influx for me in listening in that episode, and you might feel it if you listen to episode 4, of a state of unity, where everything started to come together in a different way. And I could feel that within myself and within the field. And what came out of that was this conversation about unknowingness and how it is essential, as much as compassion, love, and selflessness is, to the foundation of how life shows up. And that it is our connective. And that in the unknowing, which is inherent in everything, it is real. And it is all right there. So give us a practical experience of what you thought you knew and how you realized it wasn't that. Have you got something that comes to mind, Bud? And I'll see if
Yes, I've got to give it 2 different ways. First off, is, as I was growing up, I noticed that whatever it was a person was vehemently insistent upon, in other words, this is the correct way. When they had emotion tied to it and this and that was precisely where the problem was. And an example, here's a guy broken down by the road, and he's so mad, he's kicking his car, and he goes, "It can't be the distributor." That's the first thing out of his mouth. He goes, "It can't be the distributor. I just rebuilt it, and I put it back together, and it just can't be wrong." And so, of course, all the flags come up. What is he insisting it can't be? And I just go, okay, well, let me be kind of simple here and ask you, what did you do? And we looked into the distributor, and I went, is this possible to put it in 180 degrees out? And he goes, yeah, but it can't be that. And I go, well, let's try it. And he did, and of course it fixed it. So the practical lesson is what the person is hanging on to with emotional content, that they're stomping their feet, they're gonna kick your ass. If you bring it up again in the wrong way, they're defending something that's rigid. Yeah. Okay, same thing with me. Same in a personal sense. There's 2 things that for me to get into heart space, there was 2 things I had to defend dearly. And the first one is that my thinking has to stay operative as the command center. In other words,
boy.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay, I love it.
Okay. And to hang on to, no, because I've been killed or almost killed a few times and this and that. The stuff I know is pretty damn solid, folks. I'm not letting go of my thinking. I'm not letting go of my judgment. So I go, uh-oh, what am I doing here? I'm hanging on to something. I'm using force. So that was one of them. And the other way was after spending years and years and years of learning how to feel without thinking, using the body senses, then somebody told me, somebody very brilliant, told me, okay, first you let go of your thinking that you're clinging on to, and then you let go of the feeling that you're clinging on to. And when I started to let go of those two, oh my God, the unknown started flooding in because the walls were coming down. Okay, does that make sense?
I can track that, sure. And I think what is until sometimes we get pushed, do we meet ourselves, right? It gets very clear. You got to jump off the building, or if you don't, you die. You may die jumping off the building, but maybe it has a better option there, right? There's no time. There's no space. And see, this is what happens. There you go. We go into this hyper state of awareness, right? A lot of people call it that when they're in first responder situations and stuff. And then it all becomes crystal clear what you were hanging on to and what you got to do. And it is stepping out into the unknown, right? Because it's not safe anymore to be in what you know.
Now, wow, Janet, are you describing? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So what once was comforting, what once was protective, what once was stabilizing, what once was me, now has to be left. And you can do that easily and effortlessly, or you can hang on tenaciously to what that was, right? And your hair is starting to singe, and your feet are getting hot, and you're going, okay. And and you may land on the net, off the net, in one piece, in a couple of pieces, and none of that really matters except to the living organism, right? But as consciousness knew it needed to change. It was helping oneself because we're that interpreter of it. And those biases that were present went to the fulfillment of where they could go. And then there was no place else to go but out.
Okay.
Right?
Let me grab
into the
little
unknown
concept here called time and space.
Okay. A little one.
A little one.
A little one.
A little concept.
A little
idea.
Concept.
A little idea that we have proven over and over and over and over and over again that no, there is time and space. And so what we do so that we can not be in the heart space, not be in the moment, is grab something from time and space that we have proven so many times that when we put our attention back on it, there we are. We have left that other field and we go into time and space, and then we push that little scooter up that hill of time and space, time and space, time and space, forever until, as Janet said, we create for ourselves an emergency, or we let go of that whole construct of time and space, which is, Janet, comes from the mind. People don't know that who are hanging on to it, but when they get to the place where when I can let go of time and space, which is all of my experiences, let's say, for example, then these meanings of what's going on right in front of me start changing, and I'm able to come into the non-judgmental and see things more as they are.
Yeah. I think for myself, in my adventure of being in form this go around, and who's to say if we have any other go around? I'm open to whatever it might be. Is that we can hear clearly. Those of us who deal with this work and whatever our metaphysical trainings and, intuitions and how we, and this is where the language gets quite garbly, but however our open awareness of ourself as more than just ourselves, self. And in that terrain, truth, you realize, is truth in the moment only.
Only here. It's only here. That's
only
it.
Here. And then it can be a different truth. It can be what was is no longer. And unfortunately, one of the tricks of self and control and maintaining interpretive biases and viewpoints is to say, no, this is the truth, when it's really that false truth that we were talking about. So we can get quite confused when we listen and hear things, and we can get into all that. What I do hold awareness of myself is in being who I am, how that's an expression in consciousness. How my soul, which is the individual of the collective as consciousness and self, is the interpreter of that. What that's about. Because it's always setting for each of us premises. And then, and this is one way to think about things. It doesn't have to be your way, but it's the framework I come out of, is that we embody, right? And then self develops and explores for soul what this is all about. And it's just perhaps the thought. And this is the thought that comes out of heart, that comes out of not having an agenda, just, well, what am I going to explore? Right? And so it is very truthful, and it is our own challenge, because when we get to the level of awareness that one can get to, the rules once again can change. And so what was your truth in total honesty was what it was up to that moment. And now it too can change. Now it too has freedom because it knows what that was. It knows the spectrum of what that was. And this huge body of information that each of us represent is a point and many points of awareness in the collective of the all, right? In the spectrum. And so even in ourselves, we can reach these levels. I don't know. Do we reach levels? Because that's a, self-term. Yeah, levels of organization that if you're here, you're not there, and that's as much separation it is, right? Is that that too can change, and what is possible when you change the framework of soul, when soul changes its own framework. And I think that is something I'm really appreciating in where my life has led me to and where I am right in this moment, and whatever that means for me may not mean the same for you. And that in inviting that this and holding enough awareness that this is what I know, and with my friends and people around me who say, well, this is what we know, and appreciating, well, that's the known. If there was an unknown that was at play here that I know is right here, because that's the way things get organized, like a knife, the blade, you got one side, and one side is this, and one side is the exact opposite, and it's about the width of the blade that gives us our fulcrum and our bridge to polarity and all the variables that we hold between those things.
Can I jump?
Yeah. Sure.
When you start, well, one of the places we started and restarted on this was when we take a thought, especially when we take a thought from a state of that isn't, it's kind of a creative state, let's say. Let's say somehow we fall into this creative state. Some of the people that I know have fallen into it by getting very close to death. All the rules change. You throw out all the rules, you go, oh shit, where's the lifeline here? And we will grab an idea and then we'll wear it. And then we'll come back into this time, space, reality, blah, blah. And then we'll have a learning curve. Now, this is really, really cool stuff because, you know, you and I have got our own learning curves going on, Janet, and we have some awareness of it. And what's fun is that particularly the realization that I am very much being the way I am because of what I hold on to with my thoughts, my actions, my thinking, my words, my activities. And what you're alluding to is I can change it by changing my container, the way that I am being. And one of the ways to do that is to reprogram it. For example, one of the ways that I was being for a long time was to refuse spirit. I refused to have disembodied spirits talk to me because I had a body. And so I was removing myself from that. Okay. And so I had wonderful consequences from that. I had a lot of education from holding those walls up. You know, I was asking for spirit on one hand and they're refusing it on the other. And I said, I want spirit under my conditions only. Right? And there I went. And that was, you know, life experience. So, and I think it's very much the same thing when we idea something, like, for example, the people that I know that have gone out, been close to death, come back, they have a pretty tenacious grip on stuff because they've been up against the fire, so to speak, and they know what's real and not real. And when they come back, there's a set of rules that they're hanging on to tenaciously. And unfortunately, the way they hang on to them creates issues in the relationship of their whole self. Like bodies.
Right.
What's the condition of their bodies? What's the condition of their thinking? What's the condition of their spirit? I guess you could say any of those.
Yeah. That can take us in lots of different directions. I can feel that. So how long can we talk today? So as we notice, in letting potential be real. Oh, I know. Okay, so here was the thought.
That's the unknown. That's good. That's great.
The unknown. Right. Is how it's in our nature to prove things. That we use that logic, but it's very questionable what we're willing to prove and not prove. What the difference between what you come to believe, which is not truth, that is just a belief, as opposed to what you know the truth from within is saying, which can be very different things. So when you're in the art of being, you're not a believer, you are. Right? And we don't have a lot of awareness of that in our culture too much, I don't think. So what we do is we go to validate. We take the emotions out, we think, because we've forgotten we've got the bias on how this experiment's going to go. And prove to me, prove to myself, prove through others. And what is very hard to fudge against sometimes is someone using their logic on you. Someone using their, and they are so right, they're righteous in it.
They have to be. They have to be because that's the place they're holding themselves from.
Yes. And so sometimes we don't know what to do with that in our innocence. You know, it just rolls over you. And And, the point of where you can go, no, fuck off, that's you. Pardon my French, everyone, but that's where you get to that place within yourself. And if you're in that resonance with that, or you just go, oh, okay, I'll wear that for a while. And then at some point, your child asks you years later, why? What is that? And you go, and then you hear how it's not.
Yeah.
And so, we can, and the logic and the proving, what we're dealing with is there's nothing to prove. Proving is the limits of the self, of the body, of the belief, of the limits of what you're going to choose to be showing up.
You have to have proof you've already gone to your limits.
You've already gone to them,
and
right?
You can't get past your limit if you must have that thing you're holding on to proof.
And you're always at the limit because then you're setting up situations to challenge that limit, but always in reference to the limit. Right?
Exactly. Then you'll have your proof over and over and over.
Yes. So in a questioning, curious, creative state that consciousness is, and that's within each of us, and invites us always to, if there was a different approach to this, if this is not what I think it is, whatever this is,
that feels so good when you say that.
There you go. Right. And it's being open, unfolded, embracing, dancing, whatever the term comes to mind for each of us, about intersection of consciousness and soul and self, and how it is this wonderful dance. And neither is right or wrong, right? When you're in that kind of organization and logic, you're in self. You're in the limited bias. Consciousness doesn't care. And that's maybe hard for people to appreciate. But there's pain, there's suffering, that's in your bias about the limits of how you're perceiving that. And I'm not judging that, because all of us have met things that we would question and say is not right. And we may have been in that experience ourselves. So we value that, we honor that, and we realize in what context we view this now, right? And that's what's key to this, is that we dance, and I call it a dance, but it's all within the core of consciousness. So my sense of separation of soul and self and consciousness and you over there and that over there is really just an illusion for me to grapple with it. And it's not necessarily true, because all of that is the same. There's the same principles of organization, just in different levels of awareness. So there is no judgment in that state. There is no saying this is better than that. This is victim, this is not. Because I know in my own experience of dealing with somebody that I felt I needed to forgive, which is always about judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's what I'm also part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I understand as my creative dynamic in play that, this is where you are. What are you getting out of it? And it's a place to challenge myself. It's a place, and if I don't need a challenge, it's a place for me to love myself.
Here's a challenge, and to put it into the same stuff, different context. There is a field that is beyond right doing and wrong doing. I'll meet you there. Okay, so this is the Rumi field. This is also probably heart consciousness field. It's probably also the Tao. It's probably also God. It's probably some of those things. This field that's beyond rightness and wrongness. Right. And what Janet is saying here is that when we entered into that field, and I'm no expert at it by any means, but when I go into that field, I am able to see opposites, and they work together beautifully. It's just like the wonder of it is incredible. Yesterday, I was speaking with a gentleman who is a ministers, and I was asking him about how he uses his heart field, and how he defines this consciousness that he likes to talk about so much. And I told him that quote, and then he said, "Yes, but what if somebody murdered your family? How would you feel then? No right and wrong?" And I said, "I only feel right now that I'm sad that you would need that as your juxtaposition." And so here's what happened. He says, "Well," I asked him, "Well, where's your God at?" And he says, "Well, I don't know. It's everything." And I said, "Your God, the God you're referring to, that you would like to meet, is right here," pointed to his heart. And then we had a conversation that was very interesting from then on.
Yeah.
Hugely interesting. Right. He did a reboot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that's called He Didn't Die, but he thought he was dying. He thought he was having a heart attack. He had a lot of symptoms, but since I've had the pleasure of working with actual dying people, when I had my hands on him, I went, "No, you're not dying. You just allow this to go through you." So this stuff is so...
Well, it was a death of a false concept, right? It was the death of an illusion.
That's all that it was. That's all that it was. I could feel it. I could hear it. I could taste it. And the beauty of it was I was able to let go of my false concept about being made wrong. He didn't make me wrong at all when I said that. I just said, "I only feel sad. That's all." And I thought about my family getting murdered and all that. Right. But this is a tool that someone had to use to create fear in somebody else, because that's a way to, do whatever we're doing here. But I went, "No, that's an old friend of mine. I don't have it that way."
Well, and see, that's the compassion. That's the love. That's the selfishness and the unknown all in one moment, right? Bringing about awareness.
That's so
and I think that is especially heartfelt. Now, and remember, everyone, we're not talking about the emotional, but that's the way it can be sensed, is the heartfelt. Physical, you can feel that in the heart. Yes, you feel it in emotion, but it's the all, it's the core. That's the consciousness core that's at play here. That you could have compassion and love and selfishness and the unknown all in one space, and we can be moved. And in you describing your sadness, Bud, is your truth of what that moment was about.
Absolutely.
Right?
It was in the
the integrity of what was going on. And we are always, that's the thing about emotions, they can be in their integrity or they can be in their collective push, I guess I call it, right? We can so easily be swayed by everybody else's stuff. And then we are interpreting that feeling as ours, and that emotion can get quite strong. So when it's in the state of, yes, there's an emotional resonance present, and you can feel the minister's state with it, right?
And let me add, everybody that was involved in this was having their own reality play out. My reality was in the moment, as Janet said, because I was able to look at my in the moment feeling that came up and express it with honesty without making anybody wrong. But there's another 12 people involved here.
Okay.
Yes, like all the people that were called in the 911 call, and all the people that came in, that came in with the defib, and the guy was going through what appeared to be a state of, I call it reboot. We'll just make it simple, and you've seen it hundreds of times, Janet. But it appeared to everybody else to be whatever their thing was.
Interpretation was. Yeah,
he's having a heart attack. He's fainting. And it was wonderful because he had all of the symptoms of it, and all that was going on in my reality was he was loosening his grip on, this heart field, the way that he was using his heart field. That's all. It was so lovely.
Right. And so what happened? Did they take him away? Did he get up and walk away?
He over a period of time, and I got to be the go-between guy. Mm-hmm. His body was naked in the shower, sitting in a corner. I had my hand on his head. He had lost all his bodily control, and and done what you do when you make the great escape. But he wasn't leaving because as I said, I felt people leave, and this guy wasn't leaving. He was rebooting. He was looking at something that was very dear to him, something that he loved, that he had fear involved with. Mm-hmm. And he was letting go of some of the fear, I guess. I don't know. We'll follow up on it, but it was a beautiful experience, and everybody had their own experience. What happened? He got up, he walked away after 20 minutes, and everything was so cool.
See, that's, you can feel all those factors at play, and one of the predominant ones is caring, right? You want to protect, you want to save, you want to do all those things, and having the levels of recognition operating so that you can monitor that, so that you can be in appreciation of what the dynamics of that moment are.
The moment, only in the moment. Janet said,
only in the moment.
Only this moment. So that's all the information I let come into me, and I had the experience that was just beautiful.
Right. And that's not to say that if you hadn't have been there, you had the same experience. He may have had a different experience, and it's him choosing, creating, you being there. Those dynamics and how we co-create always.
We co-create. Our energies pull each other together, and we get to play. That's really the whole name of it.
Well, maybe that's a good place to stop, Bud.
You wouldn't be here, Janet, if we weren't supposed to be here right now at this moment. And stopping this is very nice.
Yeah, and so we always leave these moments with regrets, but that regret is just so momentary because we know we can have another one. And it doesn't matter whatever that is and where it is. So everyone, just notice how you're doing there, because that really took us a lot of places that we didn't know ahead of time. And our if we had an objective, which we really don't in designing this podcast and series and what it's all about, is to provide this place, this container for us to be able to loosen what we think we know. And what happens in that state for within each of us as we do that. So thank you so very much, Bud. It was a delight.
Janet, thank you. The greater mind that we are part of, the greater mind that would love to talk to us and can only reach us through our asking for our greater mind to appear to us, is so awesome. What a fun person it is to know you. What a fun thing. This is really cool stuff. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Bud. You're fun to play with. So, everyone, all right, we'll say goodbye to Bud and continue on. In our Roots of Associated Works section, Bud loves Rumi, and he gave us a line from Rumi's poem, The Great Wagon. I've included here a bigger section. At the website podcast page for episode 5, you will find a link to it in its entirety.
Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Here are a few consciousness cookies from the last hundreds of years. We've both providing what rings true for us in this moment. There were so many great ones to consider. One is never afraid of the unknown. One is afraid of the known coming to an end. Krishnamurti. Letting there be room for not knowing is the most important thing of all. When there's a big disappointment, we don't know if that's the end of the story. It may just be the beginning of a great adventure. Life is like that. We don't know anything. We call something bad, we call it good, but really, we just don't know. And that's P, children, when things fall apart. Hard advice for difficult times. And here's a couple from Eckhart Tolle. Thought, within stuck structure, amplified with emotions, felt with the body, becomes reality. This is being dragged around by the egoic mind. You sail yourself into physical universe conditions that further amplify the reality. Life gives you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having at the moment. When you walk to the edge of all the light you have and take that first step into the darkness of the unknown, you must believe that one of two things will happen. There will be something solid for you to stand upon, or you will be taught to fly. Patrick Overton, The Leaning Tree Poems. Here is my blog for episode 5, Consciousness and Your Known and Unknown. In our exploration of the known and unknown, we have been bringing awareness of our deeply held drives and beliefs found in the different layers of awareness we can hold. One drive as humans is to know. Live or die means we must know stuff. What is out there beyond my fingertips? Hey, what are my fingertips? What is there to explore? To know is at our core. What happens is when we find out what is out there. What do we do with that information? How do we use it? How do we live with it? How does it become us? The lessons we learn as we come to know a thing come out of our unknown perceptual biases at play in each of us. This is the eternal question why that we ask. We come to the known through our sense of safety, our need to eat and such to survive, and the thoughts and emotions these encompass. It comes from our soul's interaction as self, encompassing the unique traits to each of us in form and personality. Once we know a thing, which is, yes, that is this, do we move on? We don't like indecision, uncertainty. We like when the mind settles, as mind now has a marker for this thing. It becomes a navigational point, perhaps an identity builder, and added resonance to our stories. It is a judgment. We no longer question, no longer gather information to make a new judgment, a new decision, a new choice. It becomes fixed. We know what it is, and every time forward we are held back, for we are now stuck into a position which may be helpful at times and not so much at other times. Too often we would rather hurt because it is the known, even to the point of now hurting ourselves habitually. What happens? What is missing? What is compromised in our choice? Freedom. the ability to make change easily, a chance to change a thought and behavior when it is not wanted. We stopped questioning. Our curiosity is stymied. Curiosity and creativity are natural and flow-oriented. When something is known, the flow is now fixed. Remember the child asking questions on a roll? It happens so quickly, what leads from one thing to the next. At some point, the child grows in form and quits asking questions often. This is the human experience. Our drive is consciousness, and soul is to be, to learn of being by the ability to do, or we would not do this. Life invites and dances with curiosity and creativity. My thinking is that curiosity is vital in life. Creativity is the mechanism. Spontaneous is the result of curiosity and creativity in action together in a moment. Our challenge, if one so chooses, is to embrace the unknown as always present and available to what one thinks is, and using the unknown to do its magic as potential and make it actively engaged. It's not enough to see a thing or know a thing. It brings no awareness, no wisdom. All that does is acknowledge that there is issue, problem, etc., and validates our powerlessness to our bias. We want the first part and to let go of the last part. We are powerful in creating our experiences. We are powerful in changing our experiences. Same power at play, just different ends of the experience. To access potential, we access heart-centered awareness, the field of unified consciousness. Potential is to each of us our unknown and much more. For your known and unknown are not necessarily mine. Mine may be different, though the field is the same. Potential is the building block of consciousness. We are now in the field of the sacred, the creative, essence, all. A state of all in flowing, out of flow. In the stillness of the quiet, we hear the vibrancy of potential as it is waiting. You bring your challenge to this arena, this state, and how you know it, what you know it as, and it is now free. It has accessed the unknown and collapses the field of the known into something different. You can feel it, and you are in it right now in some way. Take time to tune in. Let your concern or conundrum be present. Ask, what might be possible if I was free to know this in a new way? It can be that simple in this state. Anyone who has a challenge and then catnaps and enjoys a new vision that finds clarity upon waking is engaging this state, inviting the unknown to merge with our known, welcoming the new information. Some will call it imagination. Others will realize that imagination is that part of ourselves as consciousness accessing the all beyond the limits of the dreamer's known world. There is comfort in being the same. What would it be like to develop comfort in being different, feeling different, thinking differently? It does not need to be threatening. It can be exciting. And some of us don't like excitement. It might be interpreted as anxiety. No worry. Just let it be present and know it is only part of your experience that you bring into the now. Let be and watch and feel what happens next. You can reach Bud at Bud-Jahn, Jahn, at Hotmail. Thank you for joining me here at Journeys Into Enlightenment with Janet. You can continue to join us every 2 weeks here on the CTR network. You can post any questions or comments there, or email me directly at janetandbeyondpodcast.com. For more information about all the elements that make up each episode, they are on my podcast page at my website, www.janetandbeyond.com. You will also find information there about my other podcast show, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and about my work with clients. You can sign up to receive my regular weekly blog, Life in the Beyond, Journeys Into Enlightenment. You will also find out about the Fuzzy Photons playground groups I offer. live interactive space via Zoom video conferencing on your favorite device on Thursdays. If you're looking for other regular opportunities to sit in heart-centered awareness with others and explore life, you will find it here. You can follow each episode of this podcast series on my YouTube channel, Journeys Into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Till the next time, feel the difference in this moment. It is real, and it can last a lifetime.